Hello everybody, Jose Rodriguez here, the 19th of May, Friday. Thank God it's Friday. Although for me, it doesn't really matter what day of the week it is. It doesn't matter. Anyway, we are going to pick up Nathan from school today. We haven't seen him for several days. I miss that boy. But before we go, I want to talk about two things. I went ahead and ordered a 100 ml lure lock syringe. What am I going to use this for? Guess what? For loading the Pro 1000 from Canon cartridges. Now, if you watch my video on vacuum loading these cartridges or positive pressure loading these cartridges, this will work perfectly. But we're going to devise a really super easy method, and this should be the best thing that you can come across. Okay, we're going to make these carts into plug refillable carts, and we found exactly the place to drill that hole and insert the plug. So we're just going to go ahead and use that method. It'll just be so much easier. And if you order one of these from Amazon.com, it comes with a nice stubby needle ready to go. So all you would do is load the 80 ml of ink and carefully inject that into the back of the cart through the fill plug that we're going to drill to modify these cartridges. Shh, it's a secret yet, but anyway, it should work out perfectly. All right, now the question was, I want to buy a new printer. I'm hovering or bordering, sitting on top of the fence, teetering this way or that way about the Canon Pro 10 and the Epson P600. But then a little monkey wrench was thrown into the mix, and I'll discuss that in the end. All right, so let's look at the differences between the two and why would I lean one way or another way. And really, at the end, you will see that it is really just up to you which one you really feel will fit your needs the best. Let's look at the Pro 10 and the P600 from Epson. Oh, and by the way, we're not even going to consider third-party compatible type support. It's there, but let's just talk about original everything from this point on, because we're going to discuss the quality that these two printers can produce with original inks. Anytime you throw in a third-party ink, then your theories are out the window. All right, so the P600 from Epson is basically the analog to the older R3000. 13-inch printer. It has roll support, but it's not like the P800. You have to load these flimsy little adapters, and it only takes 2-inch core type rolls, which are difficult to find in the 13-inch capacity. You can find the narrower sizes, maybe 10-inch wide capacity, and do 8x10s that way. But that is one of the advantages it has. It has basically up to 129 inches of length, so you can create huge 10-foot long panoramas that are 13-inch by 10 feet rather easily if you load the 2-inch core roll onto the flimsy little holders and attach them. The way to do that would be in the driver. You would choose the roll feed rather than the regular feed or the front feed. So that gives you the ability to do that. The ink set is a 9-color ink set, exactly the same as the P800, exactly the same as the 3880, the 2880. Okay, it has the vivid magenta, although the inks are now upgraded to the high definition level. What they did spectrally or chemically are basically proprietary secrets. They're supposed to be an improvement with better blacks, better reds and oranges. All right, so that is that. The head is non-removable, non-user replaceable, I should say. So, you expect the printer to last you 4 to 5 years. That's the lifespan of most of these printers. And even if the head fails, you will not be able to replace it by yourself. You'll have to send it in to the service center, and that will cost you more than the printer is worth at that point. You might as well upgrade to a newer printer. And that's the situation with most Epson printers. Now, the K3 inkset will produce very good results on glossy, luster, satin, Barita, and also all matte media. The catch is that it shares the black channel with two blacks. So you have to physically switch between each black when you switch media from, say, glossy to matte. And this switching mechanism, this valve, eventually does fail on it. So that's a negative point. The fact that you have to switch inks, it will use up to 3 ml of all inks to do that switch. So it is a bit of a wasteful process, and I would say if you're going to go the route of one of those Epson printers, that you plan your printing sessions so that you do all of your equally same type surface type papers requiring, say, matte black together. And when you do your batches of prints that will be printed on glossy or shiny media, you will then print them all as one single batch rather than going back and forth every time you want to do 2 or 3 prints with matte and 2 or 3 prints with glossy. That would be very, very wasteful way of proceeding. All right, so the negative side of the K3 inkset, pigmented inkset, is that on glossy papers it still does produce a bit of gloss differential. And what is gloss differential? It's a difference in gloss between certain parts of the paper surface and the image. So you have a paper that has a medium gloss. Sometimes the darker blacks are very glossy, so anything that's going to contain darker tones will appear glossier than the paper background. Also, if you have an area that will have a specular large highlight, that will be, in other words, no ink would be laid down, that would appear duller than the rest of the image. So that's, that's one of the problems that you have with pigment inks. They've done everything they can. They've micro encapsulated the pigment particles in a special type resin, and that does help the problem, but it does not solve it 100%. All right, so now the other choice would be the Canon Pro 10. Oh, by the way, before I switch over to the Pro 10, the P600 cartridges hold 29 ml of ink each. So they're about medium capacity in the scheme of things. Okay, so let's look at the so-called equivalent Canon Pro 10 printer. 13-inch capacity, does not have roll support at all. It has a limitation of length of 25.6 inches. So you could print maximum 13 by 25, let's just say, with a little bit of a border. And that is often a deal killer for those who are looking to print longer panoramas. You just will not be able to do so. Let's look at the inkset. Uses a 10-color inkset. That inkset also includes red, which really helps in that region of the spectrum to reproduce bright reds, oranges. And so what it does, rather than rely on the printer to produce a red by mixing yellow and magenta, it has red already there. So yellow is not utilized at all to produce oranges. Okay, most oranges. It will still use it to produce a lighter shade of orange. But the problem with that is that when you use yellow, and yellow is always a weak pigment, one that is more likely to fade, at least in most ink systems, that's the problem pigment. And on the Sure Color Epson printers, that's the ink that they actually improved upon the most, not just the blacks, but also the yellow. They didn't mention that too much, but that was the case with that. And that's the reason they did that. They actually improved the yellow tremendously. All right, so by having red, you don't have to rely on the yellow so much to create oranges and, of course, the color red. So it also incorporates 2 shades of gray, so it's great for black and white. By the way, so is the P600, two shades of gray as well. It also, both of them have light versions of magenta, light versions of cyan, which allow you to create very good gradual tonality changes. The grays also come into play in both printers. So far so good. The big winner with a Canon printer is that you can replace your printhead by yourself. You can buy a printhead, and if your printhead dies, whether it's an electronic failure or it just simply begins to clog for whatever the reason, you can actually replace that printhead by yourself rather than have to send it to the service center. You'll have to purchase a printhead, of course, but that is one of the advantages of Canon printers. Now let's look at results on print. The Pro 10 uses Chroma Optimizer, which is a clear glaze, let's just call it, that covers the surface of the paper. It will fill in all of the little microscopic gaps that pigment particles leave on the surface, which cause it to diffuse light and not appear glossy in certain areas. And magenta colors are notorious for that. So that is the advantage of that ink set over anything else. It has the ability to completely obliterate gloss differential problems and bronzing problems, especially when you are printing on glossy and shiny papers, anything over luster, satin, Barita, whatever the case. But you pay a price. You're going to use 3 to 4 times more gloss optimizer than any other ink color. That's the way it is. All right, so that allows that printer to produce majestically looking, beautiful, glossy, edge to edge, even glossy prints. And that will not be the case with the Epson. Okay, you will see the difference. Under different lighting conditions, you will see the difference depending how you view the print. If you glaze it under glass, it might not be an issue any longer, but if you're looking at a print handed to you, you will be able to see the difference immediately. So now the user said, well, should I just forget about those two printers and just go right over to the P800? Well, now you're getting into a new realm of printer. Basically uses the same color inkset as the P600, but it has that tremendous roll feed adapter. It's an expensive little gadget, $200 plus, but I use it and I love it. I bought mine on a special sale. I paid $150 for it. Lucky me. I found it, and now I'm running just 10, 15 feet worth of prints on it, and they are flawless. I am using it right now. I just ran about 10 feet of paper with about 8 prints on it, and again, perfectly working. Once you load it, you don't have to retract it fully. You just keep on printing on it, and it is a really great adapter and a great feature to have. Plus the 17-inch capacity. Now you have 17-inch by 24 prints. Wow, that is really awesome. Or even longer, up to 10 feet. The same capacity as the P600, except that's 13 by 10 feet. This will be 17 inches wide by 10 feet long panoramas. I mean, that's a wall, okay? So that also is a huge advantage over the previous two printers. The cartridges are also about 2.5 times larger than the ones on the P600, 80 ml of ink per cartridge. And so it will last you a long time before you have to start switching cartridges. Plus, let me retract, those other two printers, they have internal waste ink pads, okay, both of them. And neither one of them are service or user serviceable. You have to send them in. Once you read maximum, you have to send it in. Now, the R3000, and I assume that the P600 as well, you can probably hack the right side of the printer, enter the area where the waste ink tubes migrate down to the ink pads and divert them to an outside bottle. That's what I have done on my R3000. I assume that you can also do that on the P600. But you have to then get the software to reset the counter down to 0 whenever it reaches max especially if you are doing a lot of ink purges or cleaning cycles for whatever the reason. That ink just continues to fill those ink pads and the counter continues to rise. On the Canon printer, once they reach max, there's no way you can yourself change them. You have to send them in. And at that point, if you got your Canon printer on a good rebate, so you got a very low net total price, it really is not worth the money to send it in, because at that point it's going to cost you more than you paid for the printer. So the P600 has user replaceable waste ink cartridges. So that eliminates that problem. All right, so now that we know the difference, let's talk about third-party ink support. The P600, full ink support. The Pro 10 from Canon, full ink support. The P800, zero ink support, only OEM in the North American continent. Anywhere else in the world, yes, you can use third-party ink. It has to do with the firmware and the internal coating of the motherboard and the printhead and many other factors that they have introduced to lock that printer out of using third-party inks and cartridges in the United States and Canada. So that's it. I hope that answered your questions, Matt. If you have anything else to ask me, please do so, either by email or directly on my comment section. Make it public so other people can benefit from whatever information we are passing to each other back and forth. All right, that is it. Thank you once again. The next video that I will do, I will show you some more prints that I found on the DP Review forum. Beautiful stuff. And again, beautifully done on the enhanced matte paper from Epson. Precision Colors PCK3 HD inks. As soon as my first cart goes empty, that is it. I have to switch back to OEM. But, you know, until I reach that point, I'm enjoying the heck out of printing with this combination and that paper. By next week, I'll have 2 more 100-foot rolls of Epson. This time it'll be Pro matte paper. And so I should be able to continue to print. And from now on, I have to just buy my carts individually as I see them on eBay for the best price I can get. All right, that is it for now. Please don't forget to subscribe, share, and like. As always, I appreciate all your support. Any way you can do it, it's appreciated. Thank you so much. Happy printing, everybody. Bye-bye.